The heat outside was unbearable. Dust swirled in the air, stinging the faces of passers-by like thousands of tiny needles. On the bustling outskirts of Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso, near the old market, loud shouts echoed, traders haggled over prices, children darted around, someone dragged a cart of bananas, others yelled over their neighbors. Amid the chaos, one man stood out. He was dressed simply, a faded shirt with rolled-up sleeves, worn jeans, and old sandals. On his head was a tattered cap pulled low over his brow. He walked slowly, scanning his surroundings as if searching for something. His gaze was calm, but it held an unusual depth. No one paid him any attention. He was just another passerby. He paused at a stall where a young man in a sports tank top was harshly berating an elderly honey seller. The young man was visibly irritated. "Old man, are you crazy? No one would pay for this honey, not even dogs. Get out of here." The old man lowered his eyes and quietly replied, "It's a fair price. I collect this honey myself. It's pure." "Don't talk nonsense," the young man snapped, slamming his hand on the table and knocking over a jar. It shattered, sticky sweetness spilling onto the ground. The stranger stepped closer, speaking calmly without raising his voice. "That's disrespectful. He's older than you." The young man spun around, sizing up the plainly dressed man. "And who are you? Keep walking, beggar. Look at your clothes. Why are you standing here like a bum?" Onlookers began to gather, forming a circle. Some snickered, others recorded on their phones. The stranger didn't move. He looked at the young man steadily. "I just want you to respect others, especially your elders." "Respect? Ha! Respect is earned, beggar." The young man spat toward him. At that moment, a black SUV with no markings pulled up to the market. 3 men in suits and dark sunglasses stepped out. One whispered into a radio. The crowd froze. The young man, still laughing, turned around. "Well, look, the big shots are here." His words trailed off. One of the guards approached the stranger and leaned in to whisper, "Mr. President, is everything all right?" The market fell silent. People stopped breathing. The young man turned pale as marble, his eyes wide with disbelief. President, he stammered. "Is that Ibrahim Traoré?" The guard turned to him, his face icy. "You just insulted the acting president of the country." The young man backed away, mumbling apologies, his words tripping over themselves. "I didn't know. I swear. Please." But Ibrahim Traoré said nothing. He simply looked into the young man's eyes, not with anger or hatred, but with the gaze of someone who had seen too much. Then he turned to the old honey seller and said, "You have good product. I'll take 3 jars. And please bring a couple more to the presidential palace tomorrow." The crowd stood frozen. Cameras kept recording, some already uploading the video to social media. Ibrahim walked calmly past everyone, got into the vehicle, and left. But the story was just beginning. The next day, the internet exploded. The market video was viewed by millions. Headlines screamed, "Man insults president without knowing who he is." Comments buzzed with shock, admiration, and shame. People discussed not only the young man's actions but also the president's humility. Journalists tried to track down the young man, but he vanished, no trace. Some said he fled the city, others claimed the military took him. The truth, however, was far more intriguing. His name was Ko, and he wasn't just a brash trader. Ko had grown up in poverty. His father disappeared under mysterious circumstances when he was a child. His mother barely made ends meet, and his younger brother was in prison. From a young age, Ko was filled with rage. He hated authority, injustice, and most of all, hypocrisy. Whenever he saw someone in uniform, police or official, his fists clenched. That's why when he saw Ibrahim Traoré at the market, he took him for another self-righteous nobody lecturing him. He never imagined this unassuming man was the president. Now, sitting alone in an empty house, Ko replayed the video over and over. He saw his own face, twisted with anger, and the president's, calm, dignified. He realized he'd lost, not just the argument, but to himself. Meanwhile, in the presidential palace, Ibrahim sat at his desk. The room was quiet. He watched the market footage on a screen. His advisors demanded the young man's apology. Some pushed for his arrest, but Traoré remained silent. "He's just angry," he finally said. "Not because he's bad, but because no one has ever listened to his pain." "But, Mr. President, he insulted you, publicly." "And that's not my weakness, it's his cry." The next morning, Ibrahim sent a personal envoy to that same district. His mission, find KO, but it wasn't easy. 3 days later, the same guard from the market reported, "We found him. He didn't run. He's here, and he's changed." KO sat on a bench outside a small house. His eyes were tired but calm. He didn't resist or flee. When the president arrived, he stood. "Why are you here?" KO asked. "Because I need you." "What?" "I insulted you. I humiliated you. You showed me the people's anger. I need someone who knows how people like you think. Someone who'll tell me the truth, without fear." KO couldn't believe his ears. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a chance. You can hide in your anger forever, or you can turn it into strength." Silence hung for a minute. Then KO said, "What if I mess up again?" "Then you get back up." From that day, KO joined the president's team. Unofficially, no titles. He traveled to cities, spoke to people. He saw the world differently. His hatred began to transform into understanding, and in that understanding, a new strength grew. But not everyone was pleased. Discontent brewed within the government. Some believed the president was losing his grip, that his leniency was weakness. Befriending former street punks could undermine his authority, they said. One minister even began collecting signatures for an internal review of Traoré's decisions. Then, one evening, a man approached KO in the shadows. "You're too close to him. You don't realize what you're caught up in. This isn't just a president, it's a chessboard, and you're a pawn. When the real game begins, you'll be the first to be sacrificed." KO didn't respond. He just stared into the stranger's eyes, but a chill settled in his soul. He didn't know that another game was already unfolding in the shadows, and those who once lingered there were now stepping into the light. From that evening, KO couldn't sleep soundly. The stranger's whispered words lodged in his mind like a splinter. He didn't know who it was, an agent, a journalist, a traitor, or just someone broken and weary. But the voice was confident, almost icy, leaving no room for doubt. Everything he'd started to believe in was now at risk. He paced at night, lights off, replaying the past weeks. As a child, he'd been told that if you climbed too high without knowing who's watching, one mistake could send you crashing down. Back then, he thought it was just a story. Now, it was reality. Ibrahim Traoré, meanwhile, showed no hint of worry. In meetings, he remained calm, confident, attentive. He listened, observed, took notes. But a new caution flickered in his eyes. He sensed an invisible noose tightening around him. The people's support was strong, but his enemies, as always, moved quietly. They whispered in corridors, held unofficial meetings behind closed doors, made calls to Paris, Abidjan, even Washington. They all wanted the same thing, to restore the old order where the president was a figurehead, not a player. But Ibrahim was a player, one no one had anticipated. A week after the shadowy encounter, KO was summoned to the presidential palace at night. This was unusual. Normally, he came during the day, escorted by guards or envoys. But that night, security led him through a back entrance. He walked down a long corridor, its walls casting strange, elongated shadows. It was silent, like a museum. When the door opened, he entered a small office lit by a single lamp. Ibrahim sat alone at a desk. He wasn't writing or reading, just waiting. His gaze locked onto KO, as if he already knew what he'd say. "They came to me," KO said from the doorway, not sitting. "They threatened me, said you're using me, that I'm a pawn." Ibrahim wasn't surprised. He nodded. "I know, they're watching you, and not just you." KO felt his stomach tighten. "So it's true, there's some game going on?" "It's more than a game. It's a war, just without weapons, for now. He stood, walking slowly to the window where dawn was breaking. His silhouette seemed almost ghostly. They fear change. It doesn't suit them that a street trader is my advisor. It doesn't suit them that the people speak without fear. You've become a symbol. They want to destroy the symbol before it becomes a torch. So what do I do? Accept it, or walk away now. I won't stop you. But if you stay, you'll have to breathe smoke, walk a razor's edge, and face those who smile at you while plotting your death. Ko was silent, but his eyes didn't waver. He wasn't a hero, but he felt that retreating now would be worse than death. I'm staying. That night marked the start of the next chapter. Several once loyal officials suddenly resigned, citing health reasons. Unofficially, they were forced out. One, the interior minister, vanished entirely. His car was found burned on a wasteland, his body unidentifiable. An uneasy silence settled over the country, the kind that precedes a storm. People in the streets sensed something was happening, but no one could pinpoint what. Ko began appearing at rallies, now with security. His name was known even in remote villages. He didn't speak like a politician, he spoke like a man. Simple words, simple stories, but they held more truth than any official speech. Then, one day, he noticed he was being followed again. Not by government security, not by journalists. These were different people. They didn't hide. They stared at him openly, mockingly. He reported it to the administration, but got no response. He felt something shifting. Worst of all, he began to suspect betrayal from within. A few days later, he was summoned to a government complex for a closed council. He arrived as usual, but the building had no security. The elevator he took stopped between floors. The lights went out. He heard someone enter the shaft. The doors on both sides were locked. He banged and shouted, but only silence answered. Suddenly, the doors clanged open. Two masked men stood before him. One held a gun. "Get up, quietly. We're moving." He obeyed. His heart pounded so hard it seemed audible in the corridor. They led him through a service passage, down to the first floor, into a garage. A car waited. They shoved him inside. The car started. No words, no glances, just the steady hum of the engine. 20 minutes later, they stopped. Ko was let out. Before him was a dark warehouse, empty except for a lamp above the entrance. He stepped inside. In the shadows stood a man in a suit, unmasked. His face was familiar, not a politician, but someone seen near powerful figures. "You think you're a hero?" His voice was cold. "You're just a tool, and a tool can either cut or be discarded." Ko didn't respond. He knew this wasn't the time for words. "We're offering you a choice. Disappear, or join us. Speak for us. Be a symbol, but ours. You love the spotlight. Imagine, the same crowds, the same cameras, but you say our words. Never. You have 3 days. Think about it. And remember, even lions die when they think the world respects them." They let Ko go. No blows, no cuffs. It wasn't a threat. It was a warning. Cold, precise, deadly serious. He went straight to the president, but Ibrahim wasn't there. He'd left for the south on an inspection, without security or press. Why, no one knew. Ko felt time slipping away. He began gathering information, meeting with those he trusted, searching for any lead. Then he found one. A former security officer, fired for suspected espionage, had left a USB drive with a video. It showed 3 ministers and a foreigner discussing a regime change operation. Names, dates, plans, all laid bare. The problem? One of those at the table was the current head of the president's security. Ko realized Ibrahim was in real danger. If he didn't return, everything they'd built would collapse. He set out. No security, just a driver and the USB. They drove all night, speeding along dirt roads, through checkpoints, across fields. Each mile fueled hope. At dawn, near a river, a patrol stopped them. Soldiers with rifles. One approached the window, recognized Ko, and blinked. "He's at a farm, 20 minutes from here. But be careful. Someone's already looking for him. They raced on. The sun rose. Mist over the grass glowed like a ghostly veil. When they reached the farm, all was calm. Ko leapt from the car, running, shouting. Ibrahim emerged from a hut in a simple robe, holding a cup. "You're here? Why?" They want to kill you. There's a traitor in your security." Ibrahim's face hardened, his eyes narrowed. "You're sure?" Ko handed him the USB. "It's all we have, but it might already be too late." Then, in the distance, engines roared. 1, 2, 3. They were here. The engines grew louder, their roar blending with the wind and a rising tension in the air, as if nature itself knew something irreversible was beginning. Ko turned to Ibrahim, who set down his cup and looked toward the road. He no longer seemed relaxed. His shoulders squared, his face turned to stone, his gaze sharp as a blade. There was no trace of fear, only calm readiness. He knew this moment would come, and it seemed he'd even been waiting for it. "How many?" he asked curtly. 3 vehicles, maybe more," Ko replied. "They're not here to talk, they're here to finish it." Ibrahim nodded and, without a word, went inside. Moments later, he returned with a Kalashnikov rifle and a small backpack. His movements were steady, precise. This wasn't the president seen on screens. This was a soldier, a warrior, the man he'd once been. All his past, his training, years of service, wasn't forgotten but held in reserve for this moment, and now it had arrived. Ko's heart pounded so hard it felt like it might burst. He felt helpless. He wasn't a fighter. He didn't know how to shoot. He could speak, inspire, persuade, but bullets didn't listen to words. Bullets didn't care about truth. He looked at Ibrahim, who was checking his magazine. "You can leave," Ibrahim said calmly, not looking at him. "I won't hold you." "I'm not leaving," Ko replied, barely believing his own words. "If I go now, I lose everything I am." In the distance, the first silhouettes of vehicles appeared, black SUVs, no markings. They sped forward, barely stopping, kicking up clouds of dust. One veered to the side, flanking. Another stopped in front of the house. Men in black uniforms stepped out. No masks, armed. Their faces were focused, cold. Each had the look of a hunter. One stepped forward, the leader. He didn't shout. He raised a megaphone and spoke. "Ibrahim Traoré, you're surrounded. We're here to take you. No blood. Surrender, and you might live. Resist, and it's death. Last chance." Ibrahim didn't answer. He stood by the door, weapon in hand, eyes on the sky. Then he turned to Ko. "Remember," he said quietly, "it's not how you live that matters. It's how you die. If this is the end, I want them to know I didn't surrender." Then the first shot rang out. The bullet whistled through the air, hitting the house's wall, scattering clay fragments. Ibrahim returned fire almost instantly, precise and calculated. One attacker fell, another ducked behind a vehicle. A firefight erupted. Ko hid behind a barrel, his heart racing. Time seemed to slow. Each second stretched. Bullets whizzed overhead. The ground shook. He heard shouts, saw an attacker fall, clutching his chest. Ibrahim moved, fired, moved again, as if he'd rehearsed this battle. But the enemy outnumbered them. Minutes later, a 4th vehicle arrived. A man in an expensive suit stepped out. He didn't hide. He walked forward as if untouchable. Ko recognized him from the corridors of power. The mediator. The one who always smiled. The one who offered alternatives. His presence meant this wasn't just a rogue group. This was a conspiracy, orchestrated at the highest levels. "Ibrahim," the man shouted, stopping 50 meters away. "Did you think you were immortal? We warned you 3 times. You didn't listen. Now you'll die as a symbol, and be forgotten, like all before you." Ibrahim stepped forward, not firing. His rifle hung at his side. "If you knew how much the people hate fear, you wouldn't have come. Kill me, and another will rise. 10, 100. You can't stop a river once the dam breaks. We control everything. Borders, media, money, and we control fear. You're a mistake. Loud, but temporary. Temporary is only your power, Ibrahim shot back. A second later, gunfire resumed. Ibrahim dove for cover, but a bullet grazed his shoulder. He dropped to one knee. Ko rushed to him, dragging a first aid kit. Bullets flew, but he didn't think. He wasn't afraid. He'd crossed the line where fear lost its grip. He bandaged the wound, stemming the blood. Ibrahim gritted his teeth but stayed silent. Then, a sound broke through the chaos. Helicopters, one, then another. On the horizon, dust from a convoy of vehicles. The army, the People's Guard, those who remained loyal, those who'd waited for the signal. The resistance, a secret network built over months. They came, not for power, but for an idea, for truth. Seeing this, the attackers panicked. Vehicles turned to flee. The shooting stopped. Some surrendered, others tried to break through, but the encirclement was tight. Within half an hour, it was over. Ibrahim lay under a tree. His wound was serious but not fatal. Ko sat beside him, head in his hands. He couldn't believe they'd survived, that it was real. An officer approached Ibrahim. "President, we've got them. They confessed. It's all on camera. The conspiracy is proven." Ibrahim struggled to sit up. "Remember their faces, their names, but don't seek revenge. We're not like them. Let the world see the truth." Ko stood, gazing at the sunrise. The sky was thick with smoke. He knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. They now knew what their enemies were capable of. And now they had a duty, not just to survive, but to win.